trying to kind of gear this towards the public safety users. And I should have apologized first here too. I had a little dental work done a few hours ago, so my mouth's a little numb still. But so I'll try to enunciate correctly here. But just a quick introduction: Mike Day with True North Consulting Group, and we are your technology consulting firm for the county. And again, we work for you. We don't represent any vendors or any specific solutions. Our goal here is just to provide or find the answers to the questions that help you improve your public safety radio system. So, oops, hang. So again, just got through the introductions and everything. And probably again, this presentation, I think there was a lot of upfront stuff. Maybe especially the public safety users are already understand about the system. So we might skip through that pretty fast. If anybody has any questions along the way here, feel free to ask them, and we'll be happy to talk those through. But I'm going to give you a little bit of an understanding about the report itself. I know you've got a copy of it, and then talk about maybe the potential solutions and how the improvement or a improvement process usually works in a lot of communities, and some of the decisions that need to be made in order to get that accomplished. So this first slide touches just quickly on the current radio system. Some key things, I think, key takeaways from the Richland County system is the just the two main channels, what we would call the system channels, the sheriff repeater and the fire repeater units that are located on some 5 to 6 multiple tower sites throughout the county, and really provide kind of a localized coverage of those areas, as these are not tied together with any type of ability to support each other. So as you use them, you get that localized coverage. Unfortunately, they're using the same frequency pair, so you know, it would cause some interference if you operate these multiple site repeaters at the same time. Of course, the tone and voice paging system just operated off of a single location for the fire departments, provides coverage for alerting. There are quite a few decent tower sites in the county that the systems rely on, but for the most part, just like a lot of communities, over time you've built this system just using what was available to you and the best opportunities that presented themselves at the time to kind of solve problems, and there was no overall arching design that created the system itself. This is a table you'll find in the report. Very key, kind of gives us a general understanding of the subscriber radios in the county, and what agencies use them, and as you look forward to any replacement system, this is an area that will get addressed one way or another, but especially in these newer systems, P25 digital systems that we're going to talk about, subscriber radios can be about 1/3 of a budget, and so how they get handled can have a big impact on what the county supports, and so we'll talk about that a little bit here, but this list also tends to get refined a lot. A lot of times we did gather this information with the surveys, but a lot of times this can get pretty generalized, or as you go through various phases in the project, you tend to find out maybe these numbers are a little bit more accurate. This next slide here, just wanted to point out, give a little understanding, and there's a lot of images in the document, but a little understanding about the sites that you rely on. This is key to a radio system. Antenna height on any of these sites is translates to coverage, and again, a lot of these sites were best available and what was available, what they would provide you, and found a lot of shared resource space. So a lot of the shelters and stuff, which was great. You were just given access to share your equipment in those locations, but certainly, you know, these existing systems where you more of a kind of a repeater in a cabinet. You usually brought it into a location, plugged it in for electricity, hooked up your antenna, and that was it. You were ready to operate. And as you'll see as we get to some of these later slides, the modern radio system is much different than that, and needs much more support. And in order to provide you that blanket coverage that you would be anticipating with a replacement system. Excuse me. A lot of a big part of the report centers on the PSAP, the systems there in place that the county relies on. There's some uniqueness there. There's some age to that equipment, similar to all the system equipment. But there's going to be some challenges with the current system kind of being interfaced into the jail operations and door controls and intercom systems, and those will probably have to get parsed out because a lot of the new radio console systems won't want to directly support that. So there's a piece that we've already kind of discussed a little bit, but how that gets done and is something that probably will be investigated as we move forward here. So this probably a slide that I probably don't have to go too far in depth on. As users of the radio system, you understand kind of some of the issues and challenges, but we want to kind of point those out, and of course a lot of times coverage is king, and reliability and redundancy, but the existing equipment is definitely has a lot of it has reached end of support. I think the administrators probably understand that. You folks probably understand that as long as you've used some of those things. But these are some of the areas that we look at, and also will translate to some of the areas that when you begin to look at how you want to improve your system, that you focus in on and make decisions about what works best or what may work best for you in the future. So these are kind of addressed and discussed throughout the report. So a lot of the front half of the report is about the current system, how it operates, maybe some of the uniqueness to it, and then from there, we kind of begin to turn our attention to how to improve it, I guess, or options to improve it. But in doing so, we first begin by understanding maybe today's coverage, because again, this is the key to any radio system, is how well does it operate and provide the user support. But systems nowadays are designed using computer program that can be very accurate in predicting your existing coverage, but also future potential coverage. And this is how the radio vendors would design any system moving forward in response to a request. But these two factors right here are key in that analysis. Land clutter, which just means what kind of things interfere with your radio operation, or the ability for the frequencies to operate. And of course, like a lot of Midwestern communities, it's foliage. You'll usually probably notice that in the summer times you have much more challenges. You get a little more interference and skip, because foliage is key to breaking down the radio signals. And then, of course, the other one that really is important in Richland County is terrain. You have some very unique terrain parameters where you go from very low levels of your river valleys to your high peaks, and you go to those extremes in a very short amount of space. So these will be some factors too, as we talk about the possibility of replacing the system, where you want to make your decisions, because this will challenge this terrain, especially will challenge designers to come up with a solution for you. Now, pardon me?
No.
No? Okay. As you look, and these are some of the existing coverage maps that we placed in the report. But as you look at them, again, they're pretty generalized. It's hard to distinguish a lot of specific locations, but you like to look at them in a generalized sense too, and you'll see the terrain patterns in them most of the time, especially these being single site maps. But as you look at these two on the right, the portable coverage maps, kind of a key takeaway that you see in these operation of your existing equipment is always your talk back parameters are worse off than your talk out parameters, because these systems have just been designed with the highest antenna location, usually a single antenna, and so your limiting factor is the ability for that portable radio, which is much more of a low power device, usually operating 4 or 5 watts, trying to talk back to the antenna that's up in the air. So there's a lot of loss there, as opposed to the other direction where you've got a 100-watt base or something talking out. So you can see that, but as you look at those maps in the report, we've got 3 kind of levels we try to distinguish to just give you an understanding. Usually the green parameter is what we would refer to, and each map can be a little bit different, but as far as what it's trying to identify, but the green parameter is usually good. The yellow border is slightly worse, and then the red is a marginal location, and gray, I guess touching on the 4th color, gray, would be a location that didn't work or probably wouldn't work at all. And again, these are they're they're generalized, so they're RF radio frequencies change with the weather, with the temperature, with foliage. So these are usually conservative estimates, giving you that kind of a more of a assured level of signal. These likely server maps, they can kind of come in handy, but I like to put them in the report. Just kind of gives you the computer analysis estimate of what location works best in when you compare these multiple sites to each other, and especially when you've got a system like yours where these sites stand alone. This kind of helps out identify whether or not you're really covering your whole area, or where you have sites that are or locations that are just completely void of any opportunity to get coverage. And these, as you're looking at them, would be considered portable in-building coverage. So again, not your mobile coverage or your outdoor coverage, but kind of an understanding of how you could penetrate small buildings. You'll see the 8 dB level is the level we identify for small or residential buildings. So we've got the again, just not too much to talk about here, I guess. Just interoperability chart. To go over the fact that you're sometimes in need of trying to communicate to your neighbors. How you do that, you may use designated mutual aid channels, but this identifies that most of your neighbors are still in the VHF frequency band and either operating similar to you in the analog mode of operation, or it looks like folks in Iowa County may have began to make some changes and try to move to a digital operation as well. So as we kind of look at after getting through the existing coverage in the document, we begin to look at the potential for replacement, and we want to take a look at those and kind of use the public safety standards that you would anticipate requesting or getting with any new radio system. And so these are some of the areas that we look at. We kind of change some of these parameters in our various designs or our options to kind of give you an understanding of what the possibilities are. As you get this report, there's again two parts. You folks kind of are the users. You have your needs and desires, but then there's always the financial piece of this and the support and how to marry those up so that you get a good working radio system, but the decision makers in the county can feel comfortable that they've haven't overreached, and so as we go through some of these options, I'll talk a little bit about maybe how we've changed some of these considerations to get to the level. But again, we always try and when we do that, if we're changing, we're still anticipating public safety grade options, but some of them might just be a matter of what we've identified in those considerations. This is I probably don't kind of just wanted to touch on this a little bit here, but I guess I threw this parameter in last time, because key to understanding some of the challenges in these designs is not only, you know, locating the towers that provide you the type of coverage you want to get out of any new system, but there's always going to be the challenge, because what we're talking about here with a new system is moving from that standalone tower site to a tower site that works in conjunction with the other tower sites, and at the same time also has redundancy built into it, so that if it loses one piece of connection to the other sites, it still has a second piece of connection. And how we do that in these modern systems is normally done through microwave. These are much more like a computer network than they are a radio network. They're just radio repeaters operating at sites, and then at the point that that information gets into the system, it becomes nothing more than a computer network, passes that information around to the various sites, and then you know, synchronizes itself so that when it rebroadcasts it, there's a very minimal impact, and you can provide that blanket coverage of operation from those channels. But again, with Richland County, there's going to be a challenge of making sure we can connect those sites together. At the same time, we're finding good locations for coverage. So as you get to the options in the report, a couple of things. Again, like I said, we try and just design viable options or viable solutions. We definitely don't want them all to kind of reflect the same thing. We want to give you an understanding of where we made changes and how that impacts the budget, and how that impacts the decisions that you need to make. But we certainly want to start out with improving coverage. But these are some of those areas that we had to look at in this report. And then, of course, we always want to make sure that we're bringing that system up to what is going to be needed to support it, and not only support it, but support it the way you would want to support a system that is anticipated to provide emergency services in the public safety sector. So on the left there, those are some of the things that we'll talk about here as changing. And then on the right, we normally break these down in kind of an understanding of how a project would work. And so there are some major pieces here, and then that gives you a little bit, as you can see there, much like building a building. If you support a radio project and the amount of civil work that may come along with it, meaning towers and buildings, power, electrical power, backup generators, you're going to have to anticipate contingency funds, because you're just not sure what you're going to run into. A lot of times when we get some of these proposals in response to a request, you know, we have to understand these are paper designs, and there has to be some uncovering of what really can be supported, and along the way. So we want to make sure we have some contingency funds and possible professional services for engineering and stuff that are needed as well. So those are the sections that we break down in the report. So again, 3 options, and I'll just keep an eye on my time here. I'll run through these real quick. Again, for the most part, wanted to try and kind of give the county, especially with this first option, kind of a, I don't know, a minimal cost, a minimal improvement opportunity. We chose to, still rely on just two system channels. We chose to try and keep them operating in the analog architecture. And we did that so that that would not impact subscriber operation. And so, as you can see, that that keeps the price tag down quite a bit. And we also chose to kind of take an acceptable level of coverage. So in this design, we tried to mirror the 5 sites that the county currently has, and we did have to choose what down in the right-hand corner is considered the GF1 site, is what we refer to as greenfield site, meaning there's no tower there today. And so, but using that location kind of gave us the ability, currently you've got kind of 2 repeaters, one down at Eagle, the Eagle site, one down at Lone, I'm gonna say this wrong again because I've said it. Is it Lone Rock?
Mhm.
Okay. I said it wrong in front of the maintenance guy the other day, or a while back. But we chose to kind of use that greenfield site, or anticipate a greenfield site that would kind of support 5 towers instead of 6. But in doing so, this really it really only provides the county a very minimal level of radio coverage. This would be considered portable coverage, and doesn't meet the public safety standard of 95% coverage of the county. But again, this is in building coverage that you're looking at here. So again, if that's the option you would choose, that you'd probably have to give up some of that coverage footprint, and in order to kind of receive that minimal cost of a system. We don't. One of the things we don't really move away from is anticipating the the backbone needed to support a system or modern system. So we look at shelters and grounding and power systems, battery backup systems, which are a common part of most of these designs, backup generators. One of the things that you can move away from, if you also want to reduce some of the connectivity costs, is the microwave system. Moving from what we call the redundant design of a ring system to kind of a spoke system design, which just means that if you lose your microwave connection, that you lose your site. So a little less reliable there. So those another way to kind of minimize the costs, but that was done with this design as well. So. Option 2 takes the county and moves it to the VHF, the P25 digital operation. As you can see in that first line item, we, instead of anticipating 2, we added a 3rd repeater channel. Still have standalone paging. As you look at all these designs, the analog paging is the simulcast network, so it's not just coming off of a single site. We were able to improve. Digital kind of provides you a little bit of improvement of coverage, or a kind of a feeling of improvement. It doesn't really travel any further than analog radio. It comes back to the RF propagation. but because of the nature of not having any noise in your conversation, you tend to feel like you get a little bit better signal, and the radios themselves can kind of work down at those lower levels of operation that you normally can't work at in the analog. So we've got a portable on the street coverage here, likely meeting the 95% coverage area of the county. We're doing that with the same sites we had on the previous design, but we've now got subscriber radios in those costs. We've now got a microwave ring system, and so as you can see, it's expanded the costs of this option over that first option. And again, a lot of that can be your subscriber radios. In the report, it'll actually give you those details that we saw on the previous slide. Then the final design, again, what kind of almost scrapping, trying to maintain as many of the existing sites as we could, trying to look at what would it be to provide that full coverage or full public safety coverage indoor building operation in the county, and then also adding some capacity to the systems up to 5 talk channels, and then increasing the site locations to really blanket the county. So as you can see, jumped up quite a bit, taking those additional equipment and then an additional sites. But this is a design that really gives you probably the top end of what you would anticipate needing to carry you through for 15 to 20 years of operation. Now, another thing that we add to the kind of the end of the report is an understanding that obviously these, the county's very familiar with, supporting sites. Even though you've got a lot of best available sites, you've definitely had to support some of those over the years. But there are additional costs that we want to make sure we are making the decision makers aware of. You can install one of these systems. You're likely going to have to provide operational support, system maintenance, probably on a yearly basis, much more focused than what you might have to do today with your current systems. You've got to keep those things tuned up and timed so that you get the operation. But along with that, the backup generator, electrical services, all those things you're going to need to as well anticipate on yearly budgets. Okay. So here, threw this image into the, this is not in the report, but put this in the presentation. This is kind of gives you a picture of what a new system might look like. On the left here, this closest rack is what we consider the DC power source for all the radio equipment. Essentially, the radio equipment operates and all the systems operate on these DC battery plants, and this is very helpful to avoid any electrical surges as nothing's plugged into the wall, and then grounding, extensive grounding in the racks themselves. But then the generators essentially provide the backup here. So site goes down. These batteries really are only designed to run the site for a short period of time, but for the most part, you have a generator online within 5 minutes supporting this system anyway. So, but all this would be, of course, alarmed, and a lot of times those alarms or notifications come before the end user sometimes even knows there's an issue at a site. So, but these are some of the key things that you would need to identify in a request of a new system. We talked a little bit about coverage expectations, subscribers. Again, subscriber devices play a large part in a replacement of a system. The need here to move to the P25 digital operation. A lot of times, or various counties handle that in many different ways. We've seen them not support the subscriber replacement for the agencies. We've seen them support all the subscriber equipment, which then of course provides a great deal of reliability and even standardization of the county's users, so that you're assured that everybody is using the same equipment, operating on the same system, should be getting the same results. It gives them a little bit of control, the counties, over making sure that radios become kind of a tool, and those tools can be passed around and reused, or can be assured that that they're supporting everyone the same. So those kind of decisions have to be made along the way. So otherwise, some counties have also, just knowing that these systems take a few years, have to rely on having their agencies come up to speed. But we're talking about radio equipment that's in the $2,000 or $3,000 price range, and so quite a bit different than probably what some of the county users are using today. Let's see. So some of these options. This is what we would anticipate. The county would hope to replace the system, go through an RFP process, develop a document that kind of identifies these needs, and so this would be the next step in the process after kind of completing the discussion and analysis of the report, and identifying that desire to move forward. Of course, again, this is the balance between the financial decision and the user system. We like to do that with an open RFP request. We would tailor that document so that it identifies the needs or the desires of the county, give the radio vendors a common understanding of what you're looking for. We don't necessarily tell them how to design the system. They've all got different vendor equipment that works in different ways, but we want to tell them the minimum standards we would expect them to respond to. So we would go through these steps, and my understanding is the county's looking at making this request to move to phase 2. Go through these parameters with a group of individuals from the county to kind of work through how much coverage would you like, how much capacity do you want in the system. And I think that's the key to this meeting is making sure you folks are kind of aware of that, and what input you would have on that, or you would want to have on that. But we definitely go through and create that performance-based RFP and call out these things. Sometimes we'll call out alternates or options so that we can give the counties, again, maybe probably even the same group of folks that help develop the RFP would help score the RFP and score the results once we would get some completed responses from vendors. But we'll sometimes use alternates or options to get unique things that the county thinks that they want to at least understand, and nothing gets locked in until you get that successful vendor option that looks like it would work, and of course negotiate a contract. So phase 2 of our projects are that RFP development. Phase 3 is actually releasing the document onto the streets and getting those results, and would normally end with actually signing a contract. And then of course the last phase in a project is implementation. And as you can see on that the right hand side there, you're still talking about quite a bit of time here to get one of these systems in and actually operating. So 2 to 3 years is not uncommon from the time you start a study. So I guess with that, I would open it up to any questions anyone might have. I don't know if there was, I had some, I don't know how many folks we have from the user community. Does anyone have, I was going to go through maybe some standard topics and see if anyone has any input on say coverage or coverage outside the county.
Yeah, go up and put your input in, guys, because going up, if you've got areas of concern, now's your time to voice them.
One of the questions I guess I had was on phase 1. It showed basically the 2 main channels, and then all the way up to the third option was, I think, 5 top channels. Does that include, like, highway is still included in that first option, or is that considered one of those top channels that we would have to have?
Highway was not considered in those options. I would say that we've had a few projects where we've dealt with the highway departments. A lot of times you would want to, or what is usually desired is because your highway users are mostly mobile radio users. A lot of times we want to make sure we improve the coverage of that channel. So normal today you see a single site. We've seen where we've had like maybe 2 sites to make sure we provide the mobile coverage footprint that they're looking for, and then it allows them to keep their radio equipment. But certainly that is an area that would be part of the discussion, is specifically what to do with some of these other channels that may not be the main public safety channels. So
With the third option, we wouldn't necessarily have to go to clear to the 5 channels. That would help keep that cost a little bit down, possibly, but I would like to see possibly an operations channel, something added for sure. But I don't know what the rest of the group feels, but
yeah, certainly it becomes a question on this end is on your, on the user side is, I know I don't think the county's really congested on those channels today, but You know, you've also got to, when you're doing these designs, you've got to consider, 5 and 10 years down the road. You don't necessarily want to build the system for what you need today. But yeah, if you feel like you're short, maybe a lot of times we'll see an additional channel being used just for medical, or maybe we're seeing a couple of channels, and then the third or the fourth channel become those incident channels, or scene channels. So you can assign them as they're used, and then assign them to the next agency, and that can cross over between law enforcement and fire. But when you think of these channels, coverage, I think is a good question for you folks in Richland County. Do you feel like coverage needs to reach that level of in-building? A lot of times, we usually identify the coverage, the county border, or sometimes we'll identify at the county border plus 1 mile. But I think you guys have an opportunity to look here. Do you want that county coverage, or that county plus 1 mile, to be portable on the street? Do you want it to increase to the level of portable in building? And then are there any other? I know there's a lot of agencies that tend to use coverage come from the outside of the county, or even venture outside of the county. Are there some concerns if you have those kind of agencies that you're lacking coverage today in those areas?
Well, up in Casanova, we're lacking coverage just completely and totally. But on the EMS side and somewhat on the fire, we do stray into Sauk County, into the northern, I guess, hill and valley areas that, as of right now, within our own district outside of the county, we have next to zero communication with our truck radios, with our 100-watt radios, and there's no hope at all with a handheld portable on the street. There are times within the village of Casanova in our county where handheld on the street is not a possibility either. We've had where the truck radios are extremely scratchy to the point where it is next to impossible to understand dispatch. I don't know if they can understand us, but us understanding them is nearly impossible. Pages, it has at times taken 3 attempts to get 1 page to come through for us standing on Main Street outside. One of them was a call that ended up being a CPR call. The patient didn't perish because of that situation, but it wasn't a great feeling to wait for 3 separate pages and only get 1 with a scratchy voice. The first 2 did not have any voice coverage at all. And I guess my question, obviously we want the best system for what we can afford. My question is, with option 3, I mean, $7 million is nothing to sneeze at. How accurate are these computer models that we're gonna get this level of coverage out of? I was speaking with Barb earlier, and some of the areas that we're supposedly getting coverage with the truck radios, I can guarantee you we do not have any at all. We cannot communicate at all with dispatch. There is not even static.
Right.
So my concern is moving towards the digital. I don't know if you're familiar with what Dane County did a few years ago with DaneCom, but they invested all this money, went digital. Then after they did it, converted, they found out that none of their portable radios worked at all, period. So then they went back to analog, and then invested money in building new towers all over the county. So my concern is, are we going to spend $7.7 million in this, convert, figure out, shoot, it doesn't work as well as we thought it would, we're going to have to build more towers now.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more flatter than Richland County is.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with Dane County and what happened there. I don't know the details. I'd be interested to know what happened, but certainly when you release an RFP, we're requesting, we set those parameters of what the coverage needs to be. So if we set the parameters as a portable on the street coverage, or if we set the parameters as a portable in building, it raises the design requirements to those levels for the radio, well, the radio vendors or the responders to the RFP. They're going to do those designs, and they're going to guarantee those designs. We would request a process in the project, and they understand the process of verification of the coverage. Now, again, 95% and 95 is what we refer to as public safety standard. It means that 95% of the coverage area has to work 95% of the time. Doesn't mean it has to work all the time. It just means that it has to work to those levels, which really makes it you know, a level that they can prove as well. So we've got two things that we use to prove those parameters. The one is a drive test, is an actual coverage testing of the county using a device that measures the signal, makes sure that signal is increased enough to go inside of buildings. So they use that drive testing process to drive every road in the county, take the measurements, and provide the data that shows us that and matches the paper designs that they've created for us. And so that's one level of verification. And then the other level of verification that's especially comes along with in-building coverage is an actual identifying of, say, 100 buildings throughout the county's area. And then we do a physical voice test of those using kind of some random phrases. And we prove that you can go inside those buildings and have a conversation. And again, they have to meet the 95% threshold. So they can have some buildings fail. They can have buildings fail that exceed the level of degradation, but ultimately they have to pass those tests in order for the county to sign off on the system. And you know, they're responsible if the system that they've provided to design doesn't pass those tests, and ultimately would have to come up with a resolution at no cost to the county. But that's not something I've ever seen.
If I sounded grumpy to you, I didn't mean to. It's been a frustrating process on our part. We've gotten very reactive to as soon as the pager goes off to get our phone out and get ready to call dispatch, because we aren't going to get any voice across the system, and we essentially have to dispatch ourselves off of cell phone information. So
yeah,
our position.
Paging is definitely an area that you know, you're essentially paging off a single site. A pager device works worse than a portable radio device, receives worse. So you've probably definitely have a lot of challenging locations, and that would probably be one of those areas that I wouldn't be recommending anything other than trying to provide the best coverage for your paging channel or your alerting channel.
I guess while we're discussing paging, I just heard some comments earlier, and I just want to clear up stuff on that. So, like you said, we're essentially paging off a single site right now. With these designs, would we be paging off of every site?
Correct. So, yeah, simulcast operation would be what you would want to request, and it essentially allows you at all the locations to broadcast on that frequency. And again, the simulcast operation has to be designed in a manner that allows that to happen. Has to be they use GPS timing to set up the parameters of the base station, so they broadcast the signal at the exact same moment of time, which minimizes the crosstalk that you would have, say for instance today, if you turned on if you had two of your repeaters operating at the same time. So they're able to control that crosstalk. A lot of times they can shift antenna patterns when they design the system to move that out of harm's way if it does happen. Essentially what has to happen is that signal has to reach a device at the same or similar signal levels at a moment of time. Otherwise, the equipment tends to lock onto the best signal and only listen to it. So they're able to project all that with their RF models. How about the topic of and I don't know, I'll go as long as you guys want me to, but I don't want to keep your meeting too long. So anybody have the topic of subscribers is again, these are expensive P25 devices, public safety level. You're probably talking about $3,000 plus a device, mobile, portable. Agencies, any input on the agency's ability to support some of that?
Mike, one of the things I talked to Darren Gudgeon earlier, if you remember, is our emergency management coordinator, and he said that there may be grant funds that could help to fund the equipment to the local users. Now, I don't know if that just means grants to the county or if it means grants down to you, and there would be, I think he mentioned FEMA funds. I might be mistaken, I'm sorry. That would be available to help with those radios down to the local responders.
Yeah, that's certainly an area that, and when we ever talk about grants, is subscriber equipment is probably the only that we tend to see any counties getting support on. Grants coming along with an actual RFP project is very difficult because you don't know exactly when the system's going to be online, and there's usually a lot of parameters with that, but certainly grants and funding subscriber devices is a possibility. And then a lot of times that can be handled as needed, and certainly the P25 equipment will operate in the analog mode, and just a matter of programming and setup once you get into digital operation.
One of the questions that came back from one of the fire departments, it's probably more of a question for the county board members in the county. If the project was going to go through and that equipment was going to be purchased as part of the project, and that equipment came back, let's say as a Kenwood radio, and the department wanted to buy Motorola radios, would that money still be provided to that department, and then they could pay the rest to buy the Motorola radio?
Those are certainly some questions we've heard before as well. One of the things I would say is it comes down to a lot of details. Sometimes that is done. Sometimes counties offer a certain amount of support based on a radio. Say the radio's a $3,000 radio. The county might pick up half of the tab or something like that. One of the things that challenges multiple, and again, P25 digital standard, all the vendors build to the same standard. Sometimes some of the features don't quite work the same. There are features that are are in those various vendor equipment that are not considered a P25 feature. So nothing in the standard that requires the vendor to support that, or maybe that vendor came up with a new a feature that they are using that they only have in their equipment. So you run into a little bit of that here in Richland County. Operating conventionally, you would probably run into less of that. Features like the emergency button, encryption, they usually are standard P25 features that all the vendors can support. But yeah, the only other thing I would say is sometimes if you really get into, or if you also get into the county supporting, say, a maintenance contract or something like that, it can get a little more challenging having multiple vendors. But those, again, that's the kind of questions that and discussion that we would have in this RFP process, where we would want to kind of give you guys the understanding of what you're going to run into and help you with what decisions make the most sense. A lot of times, some of the decisions about subscribers don't happen until after the RFP is actually in the door, and you begin to understand what your system budget is. You actually are starting to really go through the approval process for spending money. You know, a lot of times up until that phase, it's just, yeah, we support you to do this, but come back to us when you get the hard numbers, and then we'll make our final decisions then. So some of that does get kicked around a lot more once you've got actual bid quotes in front of you and you understand what each vendor is providing.
So really, it comes down to what we decide we want to do, or the county decides. Because if the county decides to give money towards one specific radio, I'm going to quit buying radios, because right now we're cycling in P25 radios into our portable inventory. I don't really want to keep throwing money away if we're going to say this is the brand we're going with, but just kidding, the county is going to only pay for this one.
Yeah, like I said, this being kind of a process, and it does take time to get through these. Even once you finally sign the contract, you know, you might be 18 months before you build the actual system. And it's very helpful along the way as we have these discussions, as we put things in an RFP that the user community understands. Hey, you might be, you know, as you might be looking to buy a couple more radios next year, but be aware that this is the direction we're going. And you know, so education and the flow of information is vital here. You know, so that nobody's out there, you know, investing in something that's going to get thrown away in 2 or 3 years. And so that's why we like to kind of get a good representation of fire folks, or somebody who represents the fire community, somebody who represents the law enforcement community, the EMS community, and we just try and keep this information flowing so that everybody understands maybe where this might end up, and as we get through the steps, the RFP process. I guess I didn't touch on this. I mean, you know, we could potentially look at if Richland wants to move forward or decides to move forward in the next few days. We could look at maybe even having an RFP document on the streets before the end of the year. We may have the possibility of getting actual responses and beginning the evaluation process within the first quarter of 2022. So that's probably the fast timeline you're looking at right now, just to give you an understanding of maybe, you know, when you might know what the county's really planning on doing here. Anybody
So as
have
we
any?
move forward, do any of you have preferences for equipment? I mean, and I can't say that we're going to please everybody, because if Glenn wants Motorola, and you know,
I don't know if it's going to be down to that specific level of equipment. It's going to be more of the cost, and I guess maybe we should put Carrie or Melissa on the spot a little bit. I know that you can't answer for the board, but what is your thoughts as far as would the county be looking at putting money back out to the subscribers, and then you guys as subscribers, how do you feel? Do you think that the county should be helping provide that money, or is that something that you guys are able to do on your own? I mean, that's got to be something that is going to help answer some of the questions that the board has, but we also need to know what the board feels as far as what is that option.
I'll talk briefly. I've been writing notes as we've been listening to everybody, and one of my notes is to have a discussion at the next LEJC meeting about the subscriber part of this. I have no idea what the rest of the board might think. I also think that we need to present this information to the full board now so we can start understanding what the dollar amounts are. There's no question we will have to get a loan for this process. There's no way the county can come up with this money in any other way. And that is a rather long process. So, you know, I thinking we might have an RFP at the end of the year is probably very optimistic as far as actually going out and having the money in hand, but maybe not. But I don't think we're going to even have a discussion about this. And Mr. Langert can probably elaborate a little further, but I doubt we will even have a discussion about this project until after we've done the budget process for 2022 in October. So I don't know how to answer the question about subscriber. I mean, my initial reaction is I'm not sure that that we can afford to pay for everybody's equipment. But I guess I would like a breakdown from Mr. Day as far as what those costs actually are. I don't know if Carrie wants to comment at all.
And I'll just jump in real quick to one of the points you made is, yeah, essentially the county's going to, you would start spending money, and I don't know if I didn't really touch on this in this particular presentation, but it certainly would be glad to do one for the Board of Supervisors. That's always, or even your financial teams. Usually these projects are broken up into payment milestones, 5 or 6 on a project, and the first one starts when you sign a contract. So usually 15 or 20% is kind of a common request from the vendor, and so that's what gets everything started. But that gives you kind of an understanding too, and this would certainly be part of the RFP review process and making the Board of Supervisors aware. Yeah, those milestone payments have to be planned, and so the county can support how they support that, whether it's a bond system that they go out to or what. But that's a little bit of the background there. And I thought I had the number here in my presentation, but I know it's in the RFP or in the report, rather, gives you a little bit of understanding. And we've essentially taken a projection at what we know is that that chart in the report of existing subscriber units, and provided an understanding of maybe what the county's budget would be for subscriber radios for all those agencies.
Mm.
I'll just say one more thing. It would be really helpful to me and to the rest of the board, I'm sure, if the subscribers could give us some information about any capacity they might have to be able to contribute to the cost of equipment. I'm sure no one really wants to pay for the equipment, but it would be good to know what if any capacity each individual unit might have in helping in some way with that cost.
As a subscriber who works on budgets every year, it's kind of hard just to say, yep, this is what we can afford without knowing what price tag is going to be, I guess. That makes sense, because we have to balance this between normal capital costs, equipment replacements, saving up for future truck replacement. So it's not easy just to say, yeah, we can afford $3,000 when, you know, is that even going to be a drop in the bucket? I think we need to kind of know what an estimated cost is actually going to be for the project and go from there.
Mr. Day, how difficult is it to, I'm assuming that you based your subscriber equipment information on surveys that you got back from the subscribers. How hard would it be to tell each individual unit what their cost would be for equipment? Is that something that's really hard to do and kind of outside the realm of what you've said you would do, or is it something that would be easy to do?
It's easy to do on a budgetary level. Yeah, we certainly use some budgetary figures for types of radio equipment. So that'd be one of the parameters that we tend to have to plug into a formula. We've got a pretty good spreadsheet formula that we use, whether we use what we call a high tier, mid tier, low tier. We normally know where we use those. Vendors also make a dual band, so it wouldn't be a precise cost of a radio, but it could be a budgetary number of a radio or a type of radio, and then we just simply match that up with what the agency has told us. If they have 10 mobiles, here's the 10 mobiles. Here's the cost of that radio. Here's an install cost. With portables, we might put a spare battery and maybe a lapel mic, a carrying case. But yeah, we plug those in, and it gives us the anticipated budget for that agency. And we tend to use that document along the way a lot because as we move through the process, as we get, say, a specific response from a vendor, and that looks like the vendor of choice. We can then apply those contract numbers to the same table, and you know, within a few minutes we've got the new understood costs based on the RFP response. Or so yeah, that's something I could definitely work up.
That would be helpful both for the county board, but also for then the users as well, because it sort of gives us all a place to start as far as what kind of money we're talking. So yeah, I think that would be useful for everyone if you could do that.
Yep.
I think send that to Barb. Is that something he could send to you and you could disseminate? Do you have an email list to be able to disseminate it out to the appropriate people?
I can do that, or Mike, I think you have all the group's emails. I mean, I've copied you on a couple of emails that I've sent to the entire group. So you'd be welcome to do that as well.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds good. However it gets, I don't care how it gets out, as long as someone could get it out, that'd be great. And include, if you could copy me on that as well, that way I would know what numbers are out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer, or anything a little unclear? I know reading the report can be a good way to put yourself to sleep at night. So it's a quite a lengthy document.
Mike, there is a question. Muscadet is in Grant County, and Grant County has made the decision not to go to P25 at this time and to stay analog. So the county board supervisor expressed to me this afternoon that was a concern for them, that the analog radios continue to work with this system because their main dispatch, which is Grant, isn't choosing to go, and they already can't talk to Avoca, who's in Iowa County. How long would we anticipate analog radios continuing to work with our system?
That's certainly, I mean, that would be part of the planning process, is understanding your channels. So, you know, these will be your channels, and if you decided that that you're going to move a particular, and again, if you had, if we designed the system to have 4 new channels instead of the 2 you have today, and one of those channels you wanted to be digital and one of them you wanted to be analog, there's some ramifications to operating them that way, but you certainly could operate them that way. So you could give your neighboring agencies a way to contact you or contact your dispatch center, but you may decide that okay, my law enforcement channel is going digital because we want the features that come along with that. We want to be able to do the emergency button or the secured or encrypted communications, and the only way to get there is for us to be digital. So that channel is going to be digital 100% of the time, unless those agencies outside of your county or other agencies inside your county have the capability of doing that with their subscriber equipment. They're just not going to hear the traffic. So there's different workarounds, but there's ultimately a decision to be made is whether you want to support it. And if you have to, you come up with that workaround that says, okay, you can't use our sheriff's channel anymore, but you can contact us on this channel. And then we can relay that or we can patch that together at times if need be.
So really, I have a question for the subscribers that are in the room. What are your thoughts when you look at the three price tags? You look at the 3 million, you look at the 5 million, you look at the 7 million. If my memory serves me right, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, on the 7 million, 1.5 million of that was subscriber equipment. So the county, if they chose to pay the whole amount, they'd be buying 1.5 million in subscriber equipment, or they could be choosing to purchase $5 million worth of tower project with the subscribers bearing the burden of the 1.5. And I think that the 5 million, there was 1 million in equipment, if I'm not mistaken. And Jeff just mentioned that to me, and so I did forward the survey to Jeff. If he, yeah, it was sent, and Darren didn't forward it to me. So I'll see if I can get it from him and forward that to Mike. Right. Right.
That number might be completely different, and that's something that's gonna have to be worked out with this whole process. But that's kind of where we're trying to get to is, from you guys, are you looking to try to get that 95? Is that really what you guys want to see, knowing that it has that higher price tag, or are you okay with tapering that back? And that's what we want to try to get from you guys as a subscriber, so that we can take that back to the county board and say, hey, this is what they're looking for.
So the 95. Mm-hmm.
I think it just kind of, I don't know, and I think it comes across in my options design here, but it could be a challenge for a radio vendor. Not to say that they can't do it, but there could be that curve where portable in-building coverage in the county will require a number of sites. You have some very challenging terrain, and sometimes, if they can't provide the coverage level, when I went through the process of doing the designs, you ultimately have to add sites in order to get the coverage in those areas. And sometimes that area can be a very small percentage of the county. But it's just required because once you reach a certain threshold, you kind of you tend to need more locations just to kind of even get, let's say, the last 10% or the last 15% of the county. And so you don't really think about that, but that adds, especially if that's a greenfield site, that's a greenfield site, is easily a $500,000 price tag just for the civils. Greenfield meaning you got to build a new tower, and so and of course you got to acquire the land, or hopefully your where your tower is needed, you have some type of land that's owned by maybe another community or something, so you can site something there. But it could be, to me, it's going to be a very key discussion point when we develop the RFP is, can we reach that, or how much do we want to try and reach that in building level, or do we go back and settle for portable on the street coverage? So definitely not a topic I would take on tonight.
So Melissa and Carrie, I'll put you back on the spot just a little bit. How do you want the fire departments and the EMS agencies to communicate to let you know their thoughts and desires? I mean, because if they don't speak up and let you know what they are thinking, I mean, they have to answer to their constituents as well, and be responsible stewards of the finances for their departments. But how can they best get that information to you before August 13th?
I mean, they can certainly contact me directly, email, phone calls. I mean, I guess it's up to how they want to contact us, unless they want to put their heads together and come up with kind of a universal statement on what their needs are. But they're more than welcome to call me or email me anytime.
Yeah, they're welcome to do that as a group get together, but we need to hear from you, is my bottom line, because otherwise they'll make their decision, but it's really important to us to get your opinion. Yep.
That's the difference.
I don't know, as somebody that regularly has radio issues in our corner of the county, I don't think we should settle for anything less than what is going to guarantee us adequate coverage anywhere in our district. I know the third option is the highest expense, but at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think we should backtrack going away from digital if that's going to be the way of the world in a few years, and it's not going to get any cheaper going forward. I don't know of a single civil project that gets cheaper. I don't think the county is going to be any more flush with cash in 5 years either.
Just if anyone's talking, we can't hear anything.
I guess just the point is the vision and all the meetings I sit in is the growth of the area, the visitors, the tourism, everything that we preach. And if something bad happens, what we're here for, and we see it every day, and we don't get paged and we don't get there to help them, that's going to send a really poor message, I guess, to folks of what happened in Richland County. And I totally agree. Nothing's going to get cheaper. we're not gonna have a whole bunch of money in 5 years. I don't see it. So, I mean, from just me personally, I support the higher amount one, the 7 million one, just for the coverage on all corners of our county.
Can I just ask, with that being said, let's go with the 7.7 million, then are you willing and able to contribute to the subscriber equipment in order for us to go for that option, if that's what it comes down to?
I guess this is Scott Gold from Richland Center, and I think all of the departments in the county are gonna be a lot different. I think Richland Center is in probably a lot different situation, maybe financially, than CAS on all of our units. So I think that's gonna depend on each agency, on their probably take on that, to where what we think or expect could be totally different of Ithaca responders or CAS, EMS, or fire. So I think that's going to be individually, maybe.
I think that that's going to change. I mean, I think you and Kaz said that you're already scheduling to put in new equipment on a regular basis. So, you know, I think most of the departments are already working towards that P25. I mean, obviously, if the county was able to help out with that to get to that final level, that is something that none of the departments would turn down. But I think that they're already working towards that P25 level just because that is the standard that's out there. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of the sheriff's department cars are. I think most of Richland Center is. You're going to have some of the outlying areas like the Ithaca first responders and some of the Blue River, some of the smaller groups that don't necessarily have those the funding sources that the county may need to help some of those agencies out with.
Does anyone have any insight as to why Grant County decided not to upgrade to P25?
There's about $15 million to do their project to upgrade, and so they chose not to at this time, is what Steve Williamson reported back to us this afternoon.
Their county is a little bit bigger, and they have a lot of river valley, so they were an even bigger challenge than we are. Believe it or not, Melissa, we're not in the bottom on this one. And with that said, eventually they're going to have to make the change, I think. I don't think that there's anybody in this room that knows, that thinks that P25 isn't coming. Grant County is just choosing to defer at this point.
I'm going to have to leave, but thank you everyone for your time, and certainly get in touch with me if you have any thoughts. So thank you.
Mike, you can help. One of the questions from Ithaca First Responders was, how do they know what they have if it's P25 compatible? Now, did we get a response? And I'm sorry, it's been so long. Did we have responses from Ithaca?
Let me think here.
But they know we got ICOMs and Miniature 6s for paging. And also, I work in the highway department. I know we have a lot of Kenwood. And I wondered if they were P25 compliant also.
Yeah. So, yeah, we did have some response from Ithaca medical responders, if that's had the right agency there. But yes, we also had a lot of responses of folks having P25 equipment. So I guess the first thing or the simplest recommendation I would make is if anybody has a radio unit that talks to or talks on Wiscom channels, then you have a radio that operates P25. Wiscom is actually P25 trunking, but trunking is a higher standard than conventional operation. So, and we did have quite a few agencies identify some P25 equipment, but the one caveat you have to be careful of is sometimes you can have P25 capable equipment. And so that just means that the radio model that you have is capable of operating P25, but if you didn't buy the actual P25 features, you would either A, have to pay to have it upgraded, or well, that would be the solution in order to turn on those features is you would have to pay what they call kind of a firmware or software update of the radio. So yeah, there's a good possibility that the county has some equipment out there. And we would probably have to do a deeper investigation if we really wanted to understand that. Now, we would also want to take a look at the model that they have, because certainly you wouldn't want to do a project of this size and rely on equipment that's older when you go to replace, say, 80% of the rest of the equipment, and you're using a new feature or a new model type that could kind of cause you some type of issue. But yeah, we certainly could look at that and see what the capabilities are.
Well, and I can almost guarantee that none of those are P25.
That's what his report.
Yeah, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but and that's the route that we took in Casanova with the ambulance. We haven't cycled in P25 radios. We've cycled in P25 capable. So we would have to spend the extra money to send them back in, because I mean, it was a significant expense to buy the actual P25s when we have absolutely no coverage for it at this time. So we elected to buy the capable ones, and if it comes, then we can bite the bullet then. But and I highly doubt the highway department has P25 radios.
No, I would not anticipate that.
Highly doubt it.
That channel may just stay analog. The options that we could look at is highway just stays analog and they don't change.
I think it was my understanding that any radios that were purchased in our grant monies had to be P25 capable. So, I don't know how much difference it would be, or if I don't remember the exact wording, but in the last several years, any radios that we had purchased with the DNR grant were supposed to be able to be P25.
Yeah, that's usually, especially the federal grants. There's usually that stipulation there.
Mike, I think that they're pretty much questioned out. We appreciate your time tonight, and I know I'll be speaking to you again before the 13th.
Okay, yeah, appreciate the time as well. And if anybody has any questions or concerns and needs something clarified, certainly I'm always available. So, yep. Thank you.
Thank you.